Demchok Air Base. Now, there were certain reports that suggested an intrusion by the PLA when it comes to the Chinese intrusion, and how exactly you have the army chief who had come out to clear the air saying that there was no intrusion at all, and all of these reports are completely baseless. Listen in.
Gentlemen, I think repeatedly we all understand that there are perceptions on the line of actual control with our northern adversary. They have a perception on their alignment of the line of actual control, and we have our perception on the line of actual control. There are gaps in between. So both sides patrol and come into each other's areas. You know, this issue that there has been an intrusion, there is no intrusion. Chinese come and patrol to their perceived line of actual control, which we try and prevent them. We try and attempt to reach out to our line of actual control, or based on the limit of patrolling which has been given to us, and we visit those areas. But at times there are some celebrations that take place at the local level. You know, so celebrations were going on on our side by our Tibetans, who carried out some celebrations in the Demchok sector, and based on that, to see what was happening, some Chinese also came opposite. But there has been no intrusion. Everything is normal. I think you need to dispel this myth that there has been any kind of intrusion or any activity by the Chinese that is detrimental to our security. I think we have a very good working relationship with the Chinese. Anytime any such thing happens, we have the local commanders talking to each other, meeting to each other. We are meeting regularly, and I don't think there is any fear on this.
So has the matter?
So you have actually the army chief who had to set the record straight. Abhishek Kapoor, our executive editor, is with us because we have seen how the Doklam issue was actually blown out of proportion. We have talks that eased out the tension between the two countries, Abhishek, and this was one such political opportunity. We are looking at how the opposition really wanted to take on this issue, to take on the government. But when it comes to the army, why question them, especially when it comes to all being well? When it comes to our border between India and China, there is no clear demarcation, but there is no intrusion at all that happened.
Well, Amita, when it comes to China, deft handling is what is needed, and you cannot let emotions guide your reactions and that is why Army Chief, while allaying any fears about any lapse so far as our forces are concerned at the line of actual control is concerned, Army Chief is clearly suggesting that whatever happened was essentially because of perception issues. Now, you know, it's a complicated disputed area there, and Demchok specifically has a history, and perception issues are there, and these kind of movements of both the sides happen, Indians on the other side and the Chinese on this side, essentially because the LAC is
Abhishek,
not
I have to interrupt you. We have Major General S.P. Sinha joining us on the broadcast. Let me go across to him. Good afternoon to you, sir. What is your take, especially when we are looking, unfortunately, the politicization of this issue, where there has been no actual intrusion that has taken place, but when it comes to tension between the two neighbors, we've seen that in the past, how you have issues being resolved. This time around, too, you have the army chief who had to come out and set the record straight.
You see, there are three points on this issue. Firstly, issue pertaining to our army, issue pertaining to at national level, and issue pertaining to China. Now, issue pertaining to army, when army from time to time, by means of press conference, they keep clarifying certain issues which come into the public domain. So army has never accepted, never clarified the Chinese were able to intrude into our territory. So how can Congress, Mr. Surjewala, assume things, see dreams, and come out with such statements which have no reality on the ground? You see, my perception is that party has lost its balance, and it resorts to cheap antiques and very poor antiques to show Mr. Modi in bad light. Rafale is one example, and when we had a problem with China, then also Mr. Rahul Gandhi went and met Chinese ambassador in a secretive manner. Initially he denied it, later he accepted it. He went to China and met certain officials there. Now, how can you, in what capacity does Rahul Gandhi meet all these people?
That happened during the Mansarovar Yatra he undertook.
Yes, and therefore, and Mansarovar Yatra also, he should have taken Indian checkpost route. Why did he take Chinese checkpost route? So therefore, there are certain, issues which raise suspicion on Rahul Gandhi's behavior with regard to his national commitment. And therefore, I think it's very sad. And Congress party is a very old party and they should behave in a very responsible manner. And only when they get their facts right, they should make a statement. They should not make fool of themselves. Look at the Rafale issue. Modi chor hai. Nonsense. Your whole family is...
But how right is it for the army chief to himself come and to clear the air, Major General Sinha, because it really creates that kind of a trust deficit that these opposition parties are trying to create between the people and the army with the kind of atmosphere they want to build up. But this is really unfortunate. If there is no crisis, then why create such kind of a crisis in the minds of the people?
Congress is trying to always create a bogey. Congress is trying to follow Dr. Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, Dr. Goebbels' principle. A lie is spoken 100 times tends to become truth. So trying to confuse the people of India. What is Rafale? It's a clear example of trying to confuse the issue. There was no kickback. The price was cheaper and still Modi chor hai. So all this theoretics, all this stupid behavior, the whole nation has rightly punished Congress party for resorting to such cheap antiques. And I think when it comes to national security, Congress should behave in a very, very responsible manner and not resort to such antiques. Because on certain policy matters, they are free to criticize Mr. Modi. But when it comes to national security and which affects our bilateral relationship with certain countries, then Congress should be very, very careful in resorting to any statement. And they should be very cocksure what they are speaking about.
Absolutely, because this is not a line to politicize when it comes to the security of the nation. And that is something that shouldn't really be taken lightly. Major General S.P. Sinha, sir, thank you very much for putting your point across. Major General G.D. Bakshi is also joining us on the broadcast. Good afternoon to you, sir. What exactly is your perception when it comes to political parties trying deliberately to politicize an issue that never really existed? You have the army chief who has to come forth and clarify and set the record straight. Why even lead to that kind of a circumstance where you have the army chief to come and clarify? Why isn't that we already, when we're looking at the situation, which really never was, you have the Congress party and its leader trying to create, or rather to imagine in one's mind, sir?
Look, whatever they are trying to do for petty political gain has serious ramifications for national security. We don't want a clash with China. The Chinese don't want a clash with us at this juncture. They are very clear they are under pressure from the United States in the South China Sea with the Sea of Japan. They don't want a clash. So why generate a clash? Why try and generate an atmosphere which leads to tension between the two nations? This is what is very dangerous. This is what is very highly irresponsible. And the Congress party has not been given the charge of our northern border. Therefore, it is incumbent upon them to accept what the army is saying. The army made official statements. They ignored those and yet persisted with this propaganda. Quite obviously, the army chief had to step in and point out that you are needlessly trying to create trouble, vitiate relations with China at a time when they seem to be on the mend. Let me remind you that there has been no live fire on the Sino-Indian border, the India-China border, since 1967. This is quite unlike the Pakistani line of control where firing takes place
So
every
this
day.
really looks like a deliberate attempt to really kind of, in a way, damage the current atmosphere, which clearly spells out there is peace when it comes to the no actual demarcation of the border. But anyhow, we are not looking to any kind of conflict with our neighbors, especially when it comes to China, especially at the time when the two countries are sharing peaceful relations. Thank you very much, GD Bakshi sir, for joining us and putting your point across as well. When it comes to the army chief, he himself had to come out and clear the air. Let's listen in once again to General Bipin Rawat on what he said in this issue.
Gentlemen, I think repeatedly we all understand that there are perceptions on the line of actual control with our northern adversary. They have a perception on their alignment of the line of actual control, and we have our perception on the line of actual control. There are gaps in between. So both sides patrol and come into each other's areas. You know, this issue that there has been an intrusion, there is no intrusion. Chinese come and patrol to their perceived line of actual control, which we try and prevent them. We try and attempt to reach out to our line of actual control, or based on the limit of patrolling which has been given to us, and we visit those areas. But at times there are some celebrations that take place at the local level. You know, so celebrations were going on on our side by our Tibetans who carried out some celebrations in the Demchok sector, and based on that, to see what was happening, some Chinese also came opposite. But there has been no intrusion. Everything is normal. I think you need to dispel this myth that there has been any kind of intrusion or any activity by the Chinese that is detrimental to our security. I think we have a very good working relationship with the Chinese. Anytime any such thing happens, we have the local commanders talking to each other, meeting to each other. We are meeting regularly, and I don't think there is any fear on this.
So has the matter?
So you have the Army Chief General Bipin Rawat clearly coming out and saying that there was no intrusion by the Chinese in Ladakh's Demchok sector amid reports that Chinese soldiers crossed the line of actual control last week after some Tibetans there hoisted Tibetan flags on the occasion of the birthday of Dalai Lama. And you have the Army Chief setting the record straight that there was actually no intrusion whatsoever, where you have certain political parties trying to create that kind of an image that there is tension going on between the two neighbors, that is India and China. That meeting, that matter was taken up at a flag meeting and it was sorted out. And you have General Bipin Rawat clearly coming out and saying that we have a very good working relationship with the Chinese, and this is somehow a deliberate attempt really to create that kind of air where you have no such situation as Doklam being repeated in Demchok. This is something that you have the General of the Army, General Bipin Rawat, coming across and clearing the air that you have the certain political parties like the Congress towing China's line, but in reality, the situation is far different. All right, Dr. Sreeram Chaulia is with us on the phone line. Sir, I want to get your perspective on this issue because on one hand, you have certain political parties, especially the Congress party, questioning really what happens, our relations when it comes to our neighboring country like China. They are trying to really create some kind of a tension issue. What happened in Doklam, saying that you have the government really unable to iron out to resolve those issues. But when it comes to such an issue that really never existed, that you have the Army Chief coming out to saying and setting the record clear straight, where he goes on to say that there was no intrusion after all, everything was sorted, everything is peaceful when it comes to the line of actual control.
See, this speaks of pure political jealousy of Congress and opposition parties. They are unable to swallow the fact that they have been resoundingly defeated in the elections. They had in the past raised this issue on saying that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had failed in national security, which is of course not at all true. It's been a resounding success. His policy of managing the relationship with China has worked. Since the Wuhan summit, progressively the conditions at the LAC
line of actual control have actually improved. There have not been many major incidents or intrusions by the Chinese, and we are managing to keep it that way because we have reached some kind of a higher level understanding with the Chinese. So, for stability and for, to avoid incidents like Doklam. So, the Congress and these opposition parties are unable to accept the fact that Prime Minister Modi is being so successful. For them, this is about scoring some brownie points and trying to run him down, saying he's a failure. But in fact, they have failed in the eyes of the people of India.
But sir, when it comes to national security, why even raise questions? I mean, is this something that you're trying to create such kind of an atmosphere that never really existed and to gain some political brownie points out of this? How acceptable is that?
This shows the opportunism and the pure lack of nationalism on the part of these parties. You know, if they are challenging the army chief on his statements, and if they are trying to create a crisis when there is no crisis, it means that they are out to undermine the security of our country for their narrow, selfish interests. So this is where we have to call them out. The people of India need to be made aware that these are traitors.
Selfish interest or double standards, and this is something that we have the Congress party being exposed completely, because now you have General Bipin Rawat coming out and setting the record straight that there was no intrusion after all in the first place that happened, and all is fine when it comes to our borders with China. Dr. Chaulia, thank you very much for your point of view.